I am so good. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so
How are
excited
you?
I'm great. I'm so happy to see you. It's been so long.
I know. And I'm not very active on social right now. So I know it's nice to
That's
just
okay.
see you and be here. So are other people?
So a couple of people are on, and
Okay, good.
people may jump on and off. People may type in questions
Okay.
and
Okay.
comments, and I will help field those for you.
Okay.
And we can just get started.
Okay.
I
Let me turn on some lighting here. I'm
okay.
sorry. Okay.
No,
I'm
it's
ready.
okay. Take your time. I'm not in the best room. Unfortunately, it's a little bit of like I think a lot of people are still or back working from home again. So these common areas in my apartment building get taken. And if your timing isn't right, you kind of miss the best, sort of most private, well-lit room. So I'm in like, there's a pool table right here. And no one will bother us, but the lighting isn't great. And I have to wear my earbuds because I can hear people in another space.
Oh, that's so cool though that you have that you know,
It is.
you can I'm going to change my view real quick. So, okay, we are at speaker. Okay.
Hi, Lori Massicot.
It's Massicot, but that's okay.
Is
You
it
can call me whatever you want. Yeah.
No, I want to call you the correct name. Thank you.
Actually, Massicot
So
sounds a little more interesting.
well, it sounds French, but I don't know if it's not correct. It's not correct.
It is. Yeah. No, it is. You're right. You're right.
Oh, good. Okay. Welcome to Perry, and thank you for being here. Lori is a midlife sobriety coach. You are also a podcaster and blogger, correct? Sort of, when you get to it. I know, me too.
It's my goal this year.
Oh my gosh.
More writing. Yes,
All
definitely.
right. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to sit down, and I find it really, really difficult. And I'm a procrastinator, but I also just on top of that, you know, the last couple of years have had a really hard time sort of sitting and focusing in that kind of way. So I don't know if that's going on for you too, but
that could be a whole other discussion, right?
yeah.
It's like it's most of the battle for me.
It is,
for
it
sure.
is, yeah. Yeah.
Mhm, mhm.
So Lori, I wanted to speak with you about this issue of sobriety. And we've spoken before, but it was just for me and my little page. And I thought that bringing up this issue in, you know, for the Perry community was just vital and important, as many other issues are, but I felt like it was a piece that was lacking, and wanted to give you the space to talk about it with us. So if we can just dive right in, and you tell us your story, sort of what brought you to your career as it is now, and kind of, you know, what your path has been around this issue.
I'll try to look in the camera because I have a tendency to
Oh,
look
it's
at
okay.
I never know where I'm looking.
It's fine. I'm looking at you, and I probably look like I'm looking somewhere else, but that's okay. You can look at me.
You know, is that true? Does it look like I'm looking somewhere else right now?
A little, yeah.
Yeah.
And
okay.
I can, yeah. Now
Does it
now
look
it
like
looks
I am
like you're
now?
looking somewhat like above your laptop.
Isn't that crazy? I
Yeah.
just cannot. I'm sorry. Whoever is
No,
on this,
no.
girls, Liz, I'm so
That's
sorry.
okay.
That's all I see. I'm so sorry because I never get this straight on Zoom. It's one of my things. And so it always
We
looks
know
like
you're
I'm
talking
looking
to all
somewhere
of
else.
us, so that's okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to just look at you then.
Okay.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. Thank you so much. And I do think because of the work that you do here, it's definitely a needed conversation. I think a lot of women at this stage of life are starting to question where they stand with alcohol because of the changes that we're going through as we age. You know, as we age, we experience it differently. our tolerance starts to build. Everything is shifting, of course, in perimenopause. So I started drinking at age 14, 1982, and I quit when I was 45 in 2013. So during 30 years between that, I really just held on to the fact that when I took that first drink, it really loosened me up. I was a teenager. I was very shy, still am, very anxious, and I was in the 10th grade of high school. I had tested it out before, but that was my first experience in really drinking. And I just remember that night and thinking, this is it. I'm loose. I'm out there. I'm talking. I'm letting it all out, right? Losing all of my inhibition. So from that moment in 1982 at 14, I hung on to that for 30 years. And that's ultimately, I told myself for all these years, I need it to socialize. And then that was great in my teens and 20s because everybody else was doing it. And then in my 30s, I started to, well, first of all, I got married in between then. I got married at 31 and I had my son when I was about 33. And after that, I mean, looking back now, I think I was experiencing a little bit of postpartum. I've never really talked about that, but I went pretty dark and I was in a career that was very stressful and very, very not aligned to who I am and my personality. So it was all about making the money, working all the time. I was totally stressed and my drinking just took on kind of like every decade, a different meaning and a different level. And so at that stage of my life, it was, you're stressed all the time, caught up in the fact that I had had a baby. I put on a significant amount of weight. I was very unhappy in my body. And I just felt like I lost myself. Looking back now, I wasn't that in tune to anything back then. I really wasn't asking questions. I was just going through the motions. I was drinking because I felt this way. And that was the loop, that first cue that I got when I had that first drink was, okay, this provides me some relief. This gives me some space to be a different version of myself, the elevated version, because that's what alcohol does. It really just elevates us to another level. But then when we come out of it is when the darkness starts to set in. And I think as we get older, especially when we're experiencing hormonal imbalances and we're feeling this shift, we're trying to keep up with how we used to drink. And that's how I was doing it. I was trying to keep up with my drinking in my 20s. And I kept thinking, well, why is this? I just had a couple of glasses, why is this affecting me differently? And so as I got in my late 30s and then in my early 40s, I lost my mom within 7 months to cancer. And I really went down just this hole that I just couldn't seem to pull myself out of. And at that time, I was about 42. I didn't realize that I was really in perimenopause. I really didn't realize it because nobody was talking to me about it. Nobody was mentioning anything. And I started to experience a lot of things. And I started asking my friends, like, are you experiencing this? Are you experiencing this? No, no. And so I started feeling like, well, I'm the only one then. I can't talk about this kind of stuff. So I just kept it in. And 3 years later, I realized something has to change. I'm drinking to escape how I feel. And I'm constantly worried about how I feel because I feel foggy. I feel I had every single perimenopause, they say symptom, but I like to say experience that you could have. I started having heart palpitations. I wasn't sleeping. And I was worried, but then I was drinking to take away that worry. That's what I thought. And so the night I quit drinking, yes, go ahead.
No, please go
Just
ahead.
stop me at any time.
No.
The night I quit drinking, August 11th, 2013, I was home by myself, and my typical drinking routine then was at least a bottle, mostly two, and I had 2 bottles on deck. I had gotten through most of the first one, and I just broke down. I mean, it was just like, it was that moment because I had really been questioning it for 2 years. And I thought, what are you going to keep doing? Are you going to keep fighting yourself, or are you going to stop drinking? And the thought of that, just thinking about it now and where I was completely terrifying. And then it was completely not in my path. That's what I had told myself. You're never going to be somebody who doesn't drink. Never. And long story short, I poured the bottle down the sink, and then I opened the other one and poured it down the sink. And I stood there crying. My husband and son were camping. So when they came home the next day, I told my husband, yeah, I can't drink anymore. And we drank a lot together. I can't drink anymore. And I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to have to figure it out. And that's how it began.
I have a lot of questions, and whatever you want to get into or not, absolutely, just let me know. But I'm wondering a couple of things. You talked about starting at 14, and then you mentioned sort of these years around becoming a mother and having a really intense professional life. Were you at that point drinking every night? Were you drinking 2 bottles a night at that point? Or was it sort of like this slow ramp up, and then you became a mother and work was very intense, and then you were drinking more than 2 bottles a night? Or what was the trajectory, I guess?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, because I think the common misconception that so many of us have is, and this is where the resistance comes in, where we feel like, oh my gosh, this is not an option for me. I can't quit drinking because then there's something wrong with me. So the misconception is you're a nightly drinker, or something is, you're a heavy drinker, or you're an alcoholic, whatever the labels are. I don't go by that. At that stage, my drinking, like I said, in every decade took on a different meaning and a different level. And by that stage, no, I wasn't drinking every night. I would probably refer myself to, at that stage, a binge drinker, which means, 4 more drinks in one setting. But because I felt so bad, I pretty much drank Friday, Saturday, and Sunday was my biggest day. I had major Sunday scaries, Sunday scaries. And that's really what kept me drinking in my 30s as well. Just knowing that I had to go to this job that I was so stressed about and so anxious about. I would drink my way through Sunday, starting pretty early. And that's how I handled it. And then I did that for years. And so when I got towards quitting, I had tried to cut back. I had tried to moderate. I tried to make rules, only drink red wine because I don't really like red wine. Don't drink your Chardonnay. Don't touch champagne. I mean, I had all of the rules, and then I would break them consistently. And so when I got to that point, no, I was not drinking every night, but it's a good point. It doesn't matter. I knew in my heart, in my soul, in my gut, I knew it. I had to stop. I was not doing myself any good.
Right. So that brings me to my other question I had in mind, which is, and I do want to talk about labels. You bring up labels a lot, sort of not labeling ourselves or each other. And I also want to understand that moment, that night where you said, I'm done. And most people would label that your rock bottom. But it sounds like there was this sort of slower decline, maybe, or perhaps increasing realization that you didn't want to continue on this way. Was there something that triggered that night to be the last night for you? Or was it really this kind of like increasing awareness that you just didn't want to keep on like this?
There had been so many rock bottoms. Back then, I didn't know about rock bottoms. I literally believed, and when I talk about this on the podcast and to my clients and everybody that will listen, I literally believed that this was what I should be doing, drinking. I believed that everybody drank. I believed that people who didn't drink meant there was something wrong with them. And this is why I talk about the resistance, because there is so much shame and stigma in that version that we have of an alcoholic. And so when I was at that stage, there wasn't a rock bottom that night. I was literally watching a Lifetime movie. I was just, there was the thoughts, there were so many thoughts. But I mean, as far as rock bottoms, I've done some pretty dumb things in my life while drinking. I should have known, right? And that's where that regret comes in as you start to work your way out of this. I kept thinking, oh, why the heck didn't I do this sooner? Why did I never realize there was a problem? And that's taken me years and years and years to work through. And I still get those cringy moments where I go, oh, man, what were you thinking? You don't have to be an everyday drinker. You don't have to be any kind of drinker. All you need to know is what alcohol is doing to your daily life. And really looking at, is this something that you're aligned with? I don't think that I was ever supposed to drink. My personality, who I am, who I was born to be, alcohol was never supposed to be in that mix. I did it to fit in with everybody else. I made a decision at 14 that I was still believing in 100% at 45. And so, did that answer your question?
Yes.
I feel like I took off on a
Yes.
little
And
bit of
no, it absolutely did.
Okay.
And we're going to get back into some of what you've said, but you did make me think just now about, well, what alcohol is, if we can get into that. One of my questions was, talk about alcohol for a minute. What is it and what does it do to us physiologically?
Yeah, alcohol really is the simple explanation. It's a drink that contains ethanol, which is a toxic, flammable liquid. It's a compound, and it just affects our brain chemistry. Some of us differently. There is a release of dopamine and endorphins when we drink alcohol. It stimulates all of our good feelings, right? And so somebody with my brain chemistry, I know this now, but who really releases more of that, the chemicals, right? I want more. There's never going to be enough. I want more and more and more. So I know one of your questions also, and I don't want to skip forward to your question,
No,
but this will
please.
tie in.
Yeah.
Why some people feel like they have a problem with alcohol and they can't quit. And then other people are take it or leave it. It could be genetics. It's very possible that genetics have something to do with it. I don't have alcoholism in my family. There isn't anybody. And I'm saying alcoholism only because that's kind of what I'm talking about in general. But again, I really don't like to use labels, but as we're talking about addiction to alcohol, there's different kinds. There's the physical, where we're heavy drinkers, we're physically addicted. And that's when we stop drinking, we need to get support and help because of the withdrawals. But most women are emotionally attached to it. And that's where I was. I was very emotionally, mentally attached to it. And so that's what it is. I mean, it just messes with our brain chemistry. It makes us feel, this is the thing that I think affects us mostly, and especially in midlife, we lose our sense of self. We completely lose it. It doesn't matter how much you drink. If you're just drinking and the next day I wake up, I feel like I can't get through the day. I'm going through the motions. I feel like junk, and it's just not who I want to be. It's not how I want to show up in the world.
Lori, when you say we lose our sense of self, are you saying that's what will contribute to us drinking in midlife, or we're already in a place where we may be feeling that way, and so the idea of alcohol gives us the idea that we won't feel that we've lost ourselves? Does that make sense?
Yeah, both. I think both.
Okay.
Definitely. And it depends on how much you drink and when you started, why you started. Of course, anxiety is one of the main reasons a lot of people drink. Stress, boredom. And so when we're going through this stage of life, there's a lot of women that I've worked with who started drinking, in their 40s. It wasn't something, just because I'm talking about my story of drinking as a teenager. It just depends on what you're using it for.
Can you talk about that a little more, Lori? The women that you have worked with, in midlife who began drinking in midlife, or at least begin to see themselves as somebody who drinks in excess, is dissatisfied with how much they're drinking in midlife, and what the sort of connection may be between the two for them?
I just feel like midlife, I mean, we all know this. There's so many changes going on. There's still the financial concerns that we go through. There's divorce. There's a different level of life experiences. There's empty nest. A lot of women will go through their life helping others, their family, pleasing them, and then they leave, and you sit back and you go, I think that we're all experiencing, whether we're drinking or not, we're questioning why we're
Yes.
here, we're questioning our purpose. And then you sit back and you go, well, maybe women who haven't had a career and they feel dissatisfied, maybe they want to do something else, and it's a scary time. It really is. And then you add alcohol into it and it becomes scarier.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the anxiety piece, which I think is so important also, because in midlife, so many women find that either if they've struggled with anxiety / depression all their lives, it feels ramped up, or for many others, they've never struggled with anxiety until they reach perimenopause. And then suddenly there's this loud, dysfunction. And I would imagine alcohol, I feel like there's this thread of alcohol sort of filling a void, whatever it may be, and however it shows up. There's this presumption that it will calm the nerves, it will provide something to do, this kind of thing.
All it takes is one drinking, I call it a drinking session, one drinking session to have that proof that, okay, this relaxed me. That's it. Like, that's where we start. And then where you take it from there is where you take it. But honestly, I mean, the way that it works, it's this cycle, this loop that we get in, we drink, and then we drink some more, and then we drink some more. And then we realize at this stage, it's like I don't even remember why I was started drinking. I don't even remember what I was trying to solve here.
Right.
If it's anxiety, you have to remember alcohol is both a stimulant and a depressant. So when we first start drinking it, literally within the first 20 to 30 minutes, we're feeling those good feelings, right? We're feeling great. And you have one glass, and then maybe that's how you started out. Maybe you've never really even drank, and you start out thinking, okay, I hear other people, they're talking about this, how it relaxes them. So maybe at the end of the night, it's okay to have a glass of wine, right? And then you just get those feelings, like I mentioned earlier, the good feelings and that feeling of escape. And I just remember, for me, just that first sip, it was like I was so tense, and I took that first sip, like, okay, all right, like, okay, I'm going to lean into this. And then the more I drank, the more my anxiety got so bad, and especially going through perimenopause. But because I had drank for such a long time, one of my biggest concerns was, how am I going to relax now if I don't drink? And that's really why I held off. So really, alcohol is not helping the anxiety, it's adding to it the more and more you drink.
Right.
That
And so
that question.
it does. And so you were leaning into drinking, you were dependent on it, even though it was fueling all the fire, if you will. Yeah. Can you talk about the hormones that are affected by alcohol? You talked about dopamine and that feel-good hormone, oxytocin, serotonin. But can you also talk about, you had mentioned to me, cortisol, hormones linked to bone growth, sex hormones. Can you get into that a little bit more for us?
Yeah, I mean, it just does. It affects everything. But you know what? This is really important for me to say. You have to make sure, because we're all different. So I don't want to make this like a real broad, spectrum here. It's really important to realize, when we're drinking, we don't check in with ourselves enough. So we really don't know what's going on. Like, I really thought when I was in perimenopause, I was going to the doctor a lot, and I'm not a doctor person. I was going to the doctor all the time. And I remember talking to a gynecologist about it, and she had said, not about my drinking, just about where I was with my hormone fluctuation. And, she was kind of giving me tips on what to help with and stuff. And I remember just thinking, there's other things that I need to be doing. I was never focused on alcohol over here. So it's really important at this stage of life to determine what's causing how you feel. So if it is your hormones, are you sure? I think that's the best way to put it. Are you sure? If you're drinking, you may not be sure. And that's how I experienced it. So
Right.
yes, cortisol are sex hormones, of course, dopamine. I mean, it's all out of whack at this stage of life anyway. We're on this emotional ride. So it's always good to talk to your doctor about that and to figure out where you are. And if you are drinking, I would just say at this stage of life to take a break from it and see how it balances out.
Okay.
If
What does
that makes
that mean?
sense.
Balances out.
See how you feel.
Okay.
See how
Okay.
you feel. Because when you get in that cycle, you can't differentiate between, is this hormonal or is this something else?
Okay. You mentioned earlier that you and your husband drank together. What does that mean? And can you share a bit more about that? Because I think sort of getting into the piece about relationships, partnerships, marriages, family, home life, kind of what's happening there, and more, or not more importantly, but just as importantly, when you make the decision to stop drinking, what might happen to the dynamic in the family?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's a huge challenge for most of us because especially if you've been drinking in a relationship, any relationship, your spouse, your partner, a friend, family member, there's that fear. It's so natural and it's so normal. I mean, there's that fear that we feel like with anything that we change, but when we're feeling bonded and connected to others while we're drinking, it's super challenging in the beginning to step away. I always call it the road less traveled. Like I just chose it because I just thought I can't be on this road, even though like our roads will come together. But my husband and I met in 1997 in a bar. I will call it a dive bar, and he was a big drinker. And he worked for Budweiser. He actually worked for Frank Sinatra co-owned a company out here in California that he worked for, and he did that for many years. And we drank. I mean, we partied, we drank, we traveled, and 2 years later, let's see, yeah, we got married in '99. We had my son Spence and our son Spence in 2001. And I remember thinking when I was pregnant, I don't think we should be drinking after I have this baby. I don't think I should be drinking. That's probably not a good idea, but I kicked it right back up right when I got home. And that's really how we continued. So my husband is one of the nicest, kindest people that you'll ever meet. And I know at that we had a lot of struggles in our marriage because of my drinking. I lashed out a lot and I was I'm a very emotional person anyway. And so I remember the day that I told him I was going to quit. That day after, he just looked at me and he said, well, I don't have to drink anymore either. And so neither one of us believed the other. And then I got in about 90 days of sobriety. And I remember him saying to me, yeah, can never go back. That's it. This is it. And at that time I was still thinking maybe I will go back. It's just like wanting to quit and believing that you can and knowing that this is working. It was like two different sides of me. But he quit, and now honestly he'll maybe have a couple of beers maybe 2 or 3 times a year. And it's been a great support. And when I talk about that, I talk about it a lot on the podcast, not a lot, but I've talked about it on the podcast. I don't want to make anybody feel like, oh, well, I don't have that, so I can't do this, right? I know how blessed I am. And it's not that way for a lot of women, but we have to remember, no matter what anybody else is doing, we have to do what we believe is right for us. And it's hard. It was hard even when he quit. He didn't drink. It was still hard. We were
Hard,
each
meaning
other's.
the relationship was hard, or these?
Oh, well, yes, I was very angry after I quit drinking. I was very angry, but I was angry at myself. But again, the lashing out, that's just something that I had always done for most of my life, blaming other people for things. And, when you quit drinking after 30 years, you really step back and go, well, shoot, I got to take
Yeah.
some agency here. I got to be responsible. It was hard because we were both drinking. I mean, we were drinking partners. And so the enabling really, was something that I had to focus on, not doing, and then also asking him, please don't do it to me as well, because I was kind of that person, especially towards the end. Since Sunday was a big drinking day, every Monday morning I would wake up after maybe sleeping 3 hours that night before, and I would say, don't let me drink next Sunday. All the time. Like this went on for years. Don't let me drink next weekend. And we wouldn't buy alcohol. We would try it out. And by Saturday night, I was like, oh, could you just go to the store, please?
Yeah.
And get me some drinks. And he would. And so we really had to make a pact with each other. And that was probably one of the most challenging things, Yeah.
I can imagine. And I'm also thinking, as you just said, really how fortunate you were to more or less, it sounds like, be in unison with your partner, on both sides of the coin. So sort of, that you were together able to support each other, no matter how difficult it was, through this commitment now to no longer drink. Can you talk a little bit about those first 90 days of sobriety? You sort of are, but did you seek out help outside of your home? Were you an inpatient, outpatient? That wasn't for you.
No, and I wasn't physically addicted to alcohol, so that's important for me to mention. So I was taking, and how we know that is if you take time off from alcohol and a lot of the physical withdrawal symptoms, of course, are the tremors and the sweating and the shakes and, going through it. But even at that level, I mean, I was experiencing withdrawals coming out of it because I was feeling very off kilter as far as my moods. And of course, we all know in perimenopause how that happens anyway, right? I was very sad. So I was in a grieving period of my drinking self for quite a while. And I honestly just felt like the sleeping was really erratic, and it had been before when I was drinking, but I needed to adjust to it. And that's what happens, when our brain works itself around alcohol. Coming off of it is, takes time to adjust. So I needed to have patience. I did not go at that point in 2013. I didn't know about any kind of other option except AA, and it was a personal choice of mine. I could never imagine talking about this publicly, for one thing. I could never imagine going. But what I did tell myself at that point was, and I think this is one of the tools that kind of helped motivate myself, if I can't do this by myself, if I go back to it, then I will go.
Okay.
And I think for me, I just know myself, like, okay, well, if that's your only option, you're going to figure this out on your own.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I did. I don't recommend that for anybody. It's the reason why I do this work. I'm very passionate about this. Nobody is alone in this. It's nobody's fault that we drink. My goodness, it's nobody's fault. But of course, there is that shame. And the more we drink and the older we get, it gets really, really heavy. And so that's where I was. The shame, just the shame and the stereotype and the stigma. I mean, I'm thinking, it's an older white gentleman who's addicted to alcohol and has a problem with drinking. That's what I believed. And so this is why I talk about it publicly now. It's because there is another option. It doesn't have to be rock bottom. It doesn't have to be anything other than the fact that, hey, this isn't working for me anymore. I want to get excited about trying something else. I want to change things up at this stage of life. I want to experience my feelings. I want to experience what I can do with them instead of drink them away.
I love that. What you do, I think, is so unique in that you do say to women, however they drink, should you choose to no longer want to participate in this relationship with alcohol, however it looks like, I'm here to support you. And for me, it was the first time hearing someone sort of phrase this that way, because when I think about alcoholism or drinking too much, it's full of labels. It's a lot of judgment, I guess, about what it looks like, or my understanding of what drinking too much looks like comes with this phrase of drinking too much, right? And whatever that is, that varies from person to person. But for many women, it may be that the one drink a night or the one drink a week is just something that they no longer want to engage in. And that is enough of a reason to make a different choice, or to go down another path. And it doesn't have to be what I understood to be this kind of rock bottom, your life is upended, and you're really sort of laying that out, that, you want to feel your emotions, you want to be present, you want to get a good night's sleep, you want to understand what's happening with you at this stage of life, whatever it is, whether it be a perimenopause, a menopausal thing, a sickness, whatever it is. I find that really important and nice. Go ahead. Sorry.
No. Oh, no, no, you're right. Yeah, that's cool. Like that's what it is. But can I say something? Because I was thinking when you were talking, the reason that most women don't want to quit is because of the external view of what it is, like what you were just
Okay.
talking about, even if it's one drink. So this is interesting. Like, even if you feel like, okay, it's just, I drink once or twice, maybe I drink on girls' night out, or I drink, with my husband or my partner, my wife, whatever, you feel like there is something that is going to come from the outside world, right? That is going to make you feel like you have a problem because you just can't drink, even if it's one or two glasses a week, right? When you go out in society and you say to somebody, no, I'm not drinking, you'll get the same response, whether you're drinking two glasses a week or if you're drinking two bottles a night. It's the same response. That was
Which
the point I
is,
wanted to make. Well, a lot of people, listen, if somebody's going to respond like we fear they're going to respond, well, why aren't you drinking? What's wrong? Have a drink. Everybody drinks, right? That's what we're thinking is going to happen. Now, I had that happen, but people who drank with me for most of my life, all my close friends, are like, what? You're not going to drink? Because I had the party girl image. That was the identity I held on to for a really long time. Most people, though, won't say that to you, but if they do, it's about them. It's not about you. There's something else. But I will tell you, Rachel, most of my clients, one of the best things that happens is they'll come to a call and they'll say, I finally told my friend that I'm not drinking. And she said that she doesn't want to drink anymore either. Like, we're not having these conversations with our closest people. And then she's like, and then another friend found out that I wasn't drinking. It's just like, this is how it's spreading. This is how this other option, living alcohol free, is spreading.
Interesting. Lori, can you talk a bit about this identity thing? You brought that up a few times, that you were the party girl. It helped you kind of chill out. It kind of elevated way of being among others. What happened then when you stopped? And was that a fear, sort of, not so much around the drinking, but had you kind of thought through these issues around your identity and who you were versus who you might become? Was that
Yeah, not at that point. That's a lot about, what I work with, especially my group program that I have. We're working on that right now. It's just, it's stepping out of this identity that you think that you are as me And a lot of women, again, it depends on how much they're drinking. Maybe they don't identify at all with drinking alcohol. But for all of us, we got to check in with ourselves, especially at this time of life, and say, am I aligned to my values and my
Yeah.
strengths? Am I aligned to this person that I really want to be, my future self? And to put it like simply, I think when I quit drinking, I was a woman who drinks but doesn't drink. And what I really needed to be was a woman who didn't drink, if that
Okay.
makes sense. I was tied to, well, wait a minute, I'm a drinker. Instead of really focusing on what I did later on, I had to figure this out. What I did later on was all of a sudden, I think it was about after my 1 year anniversary of being sober, I said, why do I keep fighting myself? I chose this for myself. Nobody put this on me. I chose it. I got to step into this new version of myself. And that's what I did. And I started aligning things to really who I want to be. I never wanted to be a party girl. I'm an introvert. I don't like going out to parties. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
I like to be home.
Yeah.
And it's just very interesting. I feel like this is just such a great time of life. We're just discovering so much about ourselves. And that's what I mean by that identity. When you have that shift, once you give up alcohol, especially, are you going to keep fighting because you've been a drinker, or are you going to move forward and be a non-drinker and figure out what that means and what you need to do that?
Yeah, I love that, sort of getting in alignment with yourself, and also um, taking ownership of the choice that you made and sort of being okay with what that is now. It's rather than fighting yourself, which I think is most common, at least for a while. Um, for the enabling part, I know that you're not here to give advice to anybody, but I am curious about that because I think it's probably pretty significant. How might someone wanting to, you talked about it in your marriage, sort of asking your husband to, not buy it and then yet go out and buy it, and this kind of thing, this kind of back and forth. But once the choice was made to no longer drink and you were together in that, did that change at all, or how did you sort of begin to look at this piece around enabling and support in your own experience? Did you continue to sort of ask him to help you be held accountable, or did that become a really, you did it on your own? How might someone sort of best help someone who's wanting to make this choice to no longer drink, and how might you help yourself?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. When I quit, I did a lot of asking him, do you really think I need to quit? And, I mentioned the 90 days where he kind of came to me and said, yeah, you can't go back.
Mhm.
Even though I told myself on that first night, I can't drink anymore, I was still, there's like the devil and the angel on my one shoulder, the devil and the angel, going back and forth. It was that resistance that I was talking about where I kept fighting it. So in the beginning, I was really asking him, do you think I can drink? Do you think but I was also gaining the accountability in myself. And that's
Mm,
where we have to remember we have that capability. We have that capability. You decide what you want, you decide what you need and who you need to be to get it.
mm.
And then you take it every single day and you practice adding more things to your life and taking away the things that don't work. And I felt like there was no enabling on his end, definitely. But there was me just bringing up, do you think it's okay? And it wasn't like I was going to drink. I just kind of wanted to get some feedback. Like, what
Yeah,
do you think about my drinking? Right.
yeah, yeah.
Because I wasn't talking, I told one friend and I wasn't talking to any of my friends about it. I mean, when they started to hear that I was taking a break, it was kind of like, oh, she's probably doing it. Because at the time I was really not feeling good and I wanted to lose some weight and I was starting to kind of get into exercise. I was very inconsistent with exercise. They thought, well, it's because of your health. That's what you're
Mhm,
doing it for.
mhm.
Not even my close friends that I have known for most of my life wanted to hear me say that I have a problem with drinking. It
Right,
was very hard for them to understand that because they were
right.
drinking. So, does that answer your question
Yes. Um,
about the enabling?
yeah, I think so. I think I'm wondering how someone might come alongside somebody who has said, I no longer want to drink. And what you might say to somebody who has made a decision that they no longer want to drink.
I think that we should all remember that we never know what anybody is going through. And even when we think, like I said earlier about my clients who will tell a friend eventually, and then they'll say, I feel the same way. Um, I just feel like when anybody ever comes to you about anything like that, I'm having a hard time. We have to believe them. We have to. We can't argue how they're feeling. Nobody can argue how we feel. Um, and help them as much as possible. I know that it's more challenging, especially if you are somebody who drinks and you drank with this person. But if we can all just be willing to accept the fact that that's where a lot of us are, um, and just be willing to listen. I don't think that there's anything that we can do for anybody else. We can listen and we can let each other know that we're here for them.
Lori, what um, changed for you? What did you notice changed right away when you took your last drink?
Well, the good thing is I kept a journal, very detailed journal. So
Would you
I started
advise
journal.
people to do that?
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. I started journaling in May of 2013 to track my perimenopause symptoms. So I was tracking everything I ate, how many Excedrin I was taking, because I always had a headache. I was just like really tracking because my cycles were so off. So I wanted to make sure like what to expect. And then I started writing about, you feel horrible. You drank so much last night. So this journal, which I hadn't kept a journal since I kept a diary when I was a kid, but I started to write my thoughts and my feelings down, and to really what brought me to where I was. I should have mentioned that earlier, but the journal really helped me working it out. So I was journaling afterwards. I'm so sorry. What was your question? I totally
Oh,
lost track.
oh no, 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 it's okay. I was just curious what you noticed sort of
Oh, okay.
improved or changed or right away.
Yeah, that's why I brought the journal up. I was thinking, because I read it often. It's one of
Oh,
my
do you?
favorite reads. Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Uh,
really?
yeah, because I remind myself,
Yeah.
like, but I started to write, wow, you're feeling a lot better. And I started writing notes to myself where I would rip the page out of the journal and I would fold them up like these little secret notes,
Hmm.
and like at 6 months, at 18 months, you're feeling really good, but you're thinking about alcohol still and, all these things. But what happened was I was also tracking my weight and my workouts.
Okay.
And I started to notice that those workouts, I went to the gym when I quit and I thought, okay, I haven't been to the gym in a long time. I got on the treadmill, I just walked a little bit, and then I would go home. I thought, this is not a good use of my time. So
Mm.
I started to look into just watching YouTube videos like old school squats and lunges and all the things that we should be doing, body weight exercises. And I really started to make that my project. Like that was something that really lifted me up. And so I found that I was getting excited to go work
Mm.
out, which was
Mhm.
never a thing for me
Mhm.
at all. I've
Mhm.
always struggled with weight and body image issues. And, I never thought that my body could have muscles. I mean, these are some of the things that I legitimately talked myself into. I can't be lean, right?
Mhm.
I can't be muscular, but I really wanted to be. So I started to notice a big difference, in my body. And at
Mhm.
that stage, um, I was really just trying to make the best of it, just really trying to make the best of it. And as I got into doing exercise and working out, a couple of years later, I got on Instagram. I cannot not mention this because the reason that I am here is because I got on Instagram. And one day, this gal was posting something about these workouts that she was doing. And I thought, well, what is she doing? And it was Beachbody workouts.
Mhm.
And so I looked at it. I got into it. I signed up and I thought, well, I'm going to coach and I'm going to do this, which I did for a little bit. I thought it was totally fun. And the personal development aspect of that, and then being on social media, because I really wasn't on Instagram, or I was kind of on Facebook, brought me to the point where I realized other people were talking about sobriety.
Okay.
And that changed everything for me. And so I really didn't get into the big significant changes until around 2015.
Okay. And then you decided that coaching around the issue of sobriety was something that you wanted to pursue.
Yeah, that led me to it. I started my podcast in, I'm going on 4 years of podcasting. So 2018, I started that podcast. And I remember the first gal that reached out to me about coaching her. And I'm thinking that's where I wanted to go. But, imposter syndrome sets in, like, oh, boy, I'll never be able. Yeah. The party girl helping somebody else stop drinking. But I got into it. And honestly, my first client, she's still my client. We've been together going on 4 years almost. So, yeah, it's been very special to me. It's just something that lights me up. I just want everybody to know that there's no shame in this, and no one is alone in this. And when we talk about it, we feel better about things, and we find other solutions besides drinking.
Thank you for that, Lori. I just have a couple more questions before I let you go, but several women reached out and said, I would love to know how much drinking is too much drinking. And you saw that in my questions, and we talked about this a bit earlier, but you sort of said, well, I don't remember what you said, but the idea was it was kind of like a labeling again, and what's happening for one person isn't necessarily so for another. How does a woman know if her drinking is beyond her?
Well, if you want to look at what research says, and say the CDC or whoever puts out, the latest research on moderation, what's a social drinker, what's a normal drinker, which, I'm going to say normal is somebody who can take it or leave it. Everybody who drinks is on the spectrum of alcohol use disorder. So you start out really mild, which is very just, normal drinking. Like I said, maybe 1 or 2 glasses a week. And then you go to moderate, and then it's severe is towards the end. So I will say what I mentioned earlier about binge drinking, 4 or more drinks in one drinking session. Heavy drinking is considered, I believe it's 8 or more. And normal drinking, and if you want to go by what they say is the moderate or the normal pour, it's 5 ounces of wine and 2 glasses a day.
Okay. And
I go by how you feel.
Yeah. So yeah. I guess I'm wanting to lean into that a little bit more, because what perhaps looks excessive to one may not look that way to another. And at the same time, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just positing here, but at the same time, I suspect that if you're somebody who's functioning well, however that looks, you get up in the morning, you go to work, you're attentive to your kids, your spouse, whatever, you are high functioning, as they say, but you are drinking 5 glasses of wine a night and ramping it up on the weekends. To an outsider, that may look like a lot. That may look like a problem. And then there's this kind of like blurry line that happens. I'm sure that if you are drinking that kind of alcohol in a week, your judgment about yourself may be off. So how do you start to figure out how do you decide, I feel like I'm drinking too much, if that boundary is blurry?
Yeah, that's what I said earlier about kind of differentiating. You don't know until you know, right? You don't know until you get out of it, but you don't have to just go from A to Z. You can start cutting back,
Right.
and then really observing how you what you think and how you feel and what your actions are. What's triggering you? What is the craving that you are reaching for in that glass of wine? And then, what is that reward that you're getting at the end? Because, it changes over time. We feel like these things that we're craving are just, like what I've talked about, relaxing or bonding, those things, and they're all true. But I feel like it's deeper in midlife, what we're really craving, like stepping back and go, what do I really need now? Do I need a nap? Do I need a hug? Do I need to talk to somebody?
This. Yeah.
It's really important for us to connect with ourselves like that. I just feel like, again, it's just part of this stage of life. Like, I want to know why I'm here. I want to know what I truly want. And alcohol just takes it away. It's like this veil that you're just carrying over your brain, and just every day you're just feeling like, I'm not really sure why I don't feel so good today. It could be the drinking. So the only thing that you can do is to cut back, give yourself some time, because it does take time to get out of that cycle, and really start accepting that for yourself, because acceptance is such a part of it. You're worth it. And if you practice, let's say you take a week off, you go, wow, I feel really good. I feel really good. Well, I can go back to drinking. And then you get back into the loop again, and you take some more time off. For me, my personal experience was, this is a facade. This is a farce. This is just something that's not going to last. It's just, if I'm feeling good, that's not supposed to be my life. I'm not supposed to be relaxed. I'm not supposed to be going to the gym every day, doing the things that I'd always dreamt of doing. So there was that inner conflict that I was having. But once you really start to take a step back and just allow yourself to accept, it could be my drinking, it could be alcohol, and then take the next step. What is that next step for you? Talking to somebody, getting into some kind of support group, AA. I mean, honestly, anything that you choose, there's so many different things now, especially, which is really great.
Okay, I love that. That's super helpful and kind of answers my next question, which was, for someone ready to make a change, what are some steps to get started with? So you suggested cutting back, giving yourself time, self-acceptance, considering a program or support group. Is there anything else that you might add to that?
A lot of therapy, counseling. Yeah. Always exercise. If you're not moving and you are somebody who's not sleeping and you feel very stressed, hydrating. I mean, it could just be really simple things: water, good nutrition that makes you feel alive. And, you start working through your thoughts and your feelings, and get down to what really makes you feel better. What really is that reward that you're going to reap at the end of the day.
I love that. And I love tying it to midlife, because there are changes happening physiologically, physically, emotionally, in our day-to-day, and sort of consistently checking in with what that is, and recognizing what the reward is that we want, which may even be difficult to answer for some of us. What do I want? That's hard for some people.
That's where you've got to just really be conscious. You have to ask these questions, because all of our triggers are just coming from our subconscious, right? It's just all these things that are floating around throughout the day. And you say, okay, wait a minute, I'm going to focus right now. What is it that is bringing me to the fact that I think that I need a drink? What else can I do right now? So a lot of it is about mindfulness and really self-improving. I mean, it's just self-improvement, like different tools that you can use. We can make this super complicated, or we can just keep it to the basics. And I prefer the basics, because I've tried to make it really complicated.
I hear that. Yes, I love that. Okay, finally. What does sober living look like? What does that mean? And what do you do as a coach when someone makes this decision and wants to work?
Yeah, I've kind of gone out of using So I know that you got it from my website. My website needs a little update probably. I really refer to it as alcohol-free living because that is what so many women at this stage of life really prefer, is to say alcohol-free. And, it's not about sobriety or anything else. The ultimate goal is to really be the woman that you were born to be and do the things that you want to do. And so I feel like it's the lifestyle that just offers us so much freedom, not only freedom from alcohol, but freedom from all of our limiting beliefs, freedom from thinking that we're somebody that we're not, just complete and utter joy. I feel like living alcohol free, it just offers you so much joy, new opportunities. I can go on and on and on.
I love this. Thank you. This is really, it's so helpful. And it's, I think, incredibly encouraging, because I imagine for so many who are wanting to turn the dial down on their drinking, it can feel for a while like a black hole. And these ideas, these principles, if you will, around freedom are really encouraging and hopeful. Lori, where can people find you? How can we find you?
LoriMassicot.com or LoriMassicot.com or
I'm never saying Massicot again.
My podcast 250 and Beyond, and I'm on a little bit of a hiatus right now, but I'll be back next month. And sometimes I'm on Instagram at the same name.
Yeah, and I will tag Lori and her podcast also, which is excellent.
Thank you.
So for those
Rachel's been on it.
What's that?
You've been on it.
I have been on it. I was on it.
Was that last year?
I think it was the year before. It was very early on in my Instagram life, which is just about 2 years now.
Okay. Yeah, that was a fun episode.
It was fun. Lori Massicot, thank you so much for joining us. This has just been a tremendous hour.
Thank you.
So much that we
thank you.
got from speaking with you. And I hope we can visit with you again in the future. That would be
definitely
great.
Yeah, it was just a pleasure. And thank you, everybody. I know I'm not looking at the camera probably, but thank you everybody for being here.
We see you
thank you, Rachel. Thank you for having me. I love what you guys are doing. I think it's amazing. And I'm so proud of you, Rachel. I'm so proud of you.
Thanks, Lori. Thank you so much.
You're doing amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, guys. And we'll talk soon.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Lori. Be well.
Take care, everybody.